So first of all, thank you for joining in. This talk is about how to bring your stories into Unreal Engine from the very first sketch. My name is Elodie Moog. I've been working in the 2D animation industry for 15 years, not as an animator or an artist, but as a tech sales agent. And I am the company manager and the co-founder of Praxinos. As you can hear, I am French, and so is the company, obviously. It was created 4 years ago in late 2018, and we're a small company. We just have 6 full-time employees, including myself. And so, obviously, we developed 2D tools for Unreal Engine. So today, I am about to talk about 2 of our plugins, ILIAD and EPOS. They are both available for free on the Unreal Engine marketplace, so you know. And let's start with ILIAD. ILIAD is the very first plugin we released. It was done 3 years ago, and it's a painting plugin. It means you can, with ILIAD, you can edit texture 2D, and you can also create texture 2D from scratch, so you don't have to import PNG, JPEGs. You can just create the texture 2D directly from scratch thanks to ILIAD. Here are a few examples where you can use ILIAD. So here we have this German Shepherd that comes also from the marketplace. It's a realistic German Shepherd, and we're using different watercolor brushes to make it more stylized. So we will be switching from something very realistic to something more, more stylized. It's a total different rendering. So you can see here we have the realistic version, and here the stylized version. You can even see it move. There you go. So this is a first usage, editing, changing characters. But you can also use ILIAD, for instance, to edit foliages. So here I have an example, another one or so. And here, which is interesting, is the fact that we are combining ILIAD with another plugin that is developed by this company, Red House Games, named Sprout. I don't know if it's released yet, actually. Here, another example with decals, where I'm painting on the texture 2D used in the decals, and we can see it being changed in real time. We can see the layer style, we can see the different colors. I can even play with the opacity to change a little bit the order also of the layers. This is the kind of things you can do with ILIAD. Another example, here this time we will be editing post-process volumes. So we have, again, this texture 2D assigned to this post-process volume here on the left. And this post-process is affecting the shadows of the scene. So depending on what I'm painting on the right, we can see the result on the left. And we can even see the results on the scene, which is terrible. So that's why we are going back to the white. Okay. And another example, not really related exactly to the 2D animation industry, but more for video game industry, for the one who wants to make 2D animation games. That is a possibility with Unreal Engine. And thanks to ILIAD, you have the possibility to create and edit flipbooks. So here we have a flipbook with different layers. We have different keyframes, so we can change the exposure value for each keyframe. We can drag and drop to change the order of the keyframes. Here we put it back. Change the duration. And then we'll be placing it directly into the environment. And so here I was editing an existing flipbook, but let's see what happens when you create a flipbook from scratch. So here I'm creating a flipbook, I double click, I open ILIAD automatically, and then I just have to create a bunch of keyframes and paint on them, that's all. It is quite simple, there is no light table or onion skin, but yet to do simple sprite animation is it's really good. And you could see very quickly on the content border, we had all the sprites and all the texture 2D created. And here I'm just changing the exposure value for each keyframe, so it will be a little slower down. Yeah. So far, I've just shown you the 2D interface of ILIAD, because we actually have 2 interfaces. There is the texture editor, where we just see the texture 2D and we can paint on it. And if it is assigned to any other element in Unreal Engine, we can see it being updated in real time. But we also have a 3D interface. And in this case, we will just enable the ILIAD mode directly from the viewport, just like you would edit foliage mode or landscape mode. Here you edit ILIAD, and you just have to quickly set your layout, because by default there is no layout. You just pick up the panels you want to use, and there you go. Then you can save your layout, and you're ready to draw and to work with ILIAD. Another example where we can directly paint on 3D assets. So here we are painting kangaroo on the road sign, so hello to Australian friends. But you might think, okay, we can actually paint on a 3D object, but it's a road sign, it's very flat, that's not really impressive. Okay, you're right. Let's paint on a 3D volume. Here you have a tree, and by the way, it's a megascan. It's a tree that comes from the Quixel library that is totally stylized using different watercolor brushes, gouache brushes, to make something very unique. And you can see here at the top left, the bottom left corner, we can see all the different layers created. And so far, I've been always working on the diffuse, on the albedo, but we can also work on normal maps if we want to. As long as you have normal map brushes, you can edit them. So here you can see the results in real time again, which is then a good transition for me to speak about brushes. ILIAD provides 75 brushes by default. We also sell extra brush packs on the marketplace. And our brush engine is blueprint-based. It means it is quite more advanced compared to other painting software where you just have an interface with slides and you change a few things like this. Here you have much more possibilities when creating blueprint brushes. It's quite complicated. You need to be a little nerd to go inside, but that's possible. Even I am not a developer, I am able to create a few blueprint brushes. And if you need any help, we'll be really happy to help you. Regarding format, import, export, we have different color depth for the texture 2D. We can export from ILIAD, we can export PNG, TGA, bitmap, and JPEG. We can also import all these file formats, and we can also import PSD. So here we have a case with a drawing made on Photoshop. We're just drag and dropping it to ILIAD, and since ILIAD has a layer-based structure, we will keep the layers directly into the texture 2D. Anyway, even if ILIAD is very versatile, it can do many things, there are still a few things it cannot do. For instance, you can only paint on static meshes. You can't paint on skeletal meshes, for instance. You can't paint on virtual texture, the option must be turned off. Then after, you can turn it on again, but when you draw directly with ILIAD, you have to turn it off. So far, we don't have all these classic tools like selection, transform, distort. We can't even really draw shapes like rectangle or circle. It's still a work in progress, and I know I'm saying so for years, but it's really a work in progress. Just keep an eye on it, it's coming. And the last thing we can't do, and I'm not sure we will ever do this, it's PBR painting. Because even if we can paint on the albedo, we can paint on the normal map and other texture 2D, we can't do all of this at the same time. We can't edit the diffuse and the normal map at the same time. You have to do it separately. So that's quite all about ILIAD, so let's now talk about EPOS, the second plugin. But first, so EPOS is a storyboard plugin. It relies on the sequencer, and it is designed for 3D artists and especially for storyboard artists. Well, why EPOS? When we released ILIAD, we thought, okay, we could actually make 2D storyboards with ILIAD. That's true. But we realized how tedious the task could be with Unreal Engine because you have so many things to do. You have to create the camera actors, you have to create the plane actor, you have to place it in the right position with the right, the good size. You have to create the texture 2D, you have to create the material, you have to change the material, you have to assign it to the plane, and then you have to create the level sequence and pull all of this within the level sequence. This is much too complicated for a storyboard artist. They just want to have a paper and a pen and they just want to draw, that's all. So we thought, okay, we have to change the way the sequencer will work with our plugin, with EPOS. So basically, if we look at the level sequence, how it works, a level sequence works kind of an editing software, you know. You already have your assets, you already have your actors, you just have to drag and drop them into the level sequence, and then you create your sequence thanks to the sequencer. It works like an assembler, like an editing tool. With EPOS, as I said, we couldn't have this way of working. We had to act like an animation software or like a storyboard software. So instead of drag and dropping existing assets, we will generate all these things, all the actors and the assets directly from the sequencer. Let me explain with a video. So here we have a low poly environment. Very simple. We'll click there and we will create the storyboard. We have many options right there. It's a naming convention, but really we don't care about it. We just go straight to the bottom right corner to create a storyboard. Immediately we have the sequencer ready to be used. And into the sequencer we have a board track, which is empty at the moment. So we will be creating a shot sequence because that's something I forgot to say. We actually have two types of assets. We have board sequences and we have shot sequences. Board sequences are like a big container. It's like a big folder for your whole story. And then the shot sequences will be a little like the level sequence. It will be all the different camera views. So we're about to create a shot sequence within the board sequence. So we'll click here, and we have a shot sequence, which is empty at the moment. So we'll be clicking here on the tiny camera icon to create actually 3 and even 4 elements in a click. So first we have the camera. So we'll be creating the camera actor. We can define the name, we can define the ratio of the camera, we can define the focal length, the aperture, all the things we will be defining with the camera actor. That's the same. Then we'll be setting the plane. By default, the plane has the same ratio as the camera view, but you can maybe decide to have extra margin, so to go beyond the camera view. And you can even change the relative scaling, so maybe the plane will be wider or taller than the camera view. And then we will setting the texture 2D. The texture 2D, by default, you can only change the height because the width is automatically calculated depending on the plane size, on the plane ratio. So, okay, let's click now on Create New Camera and its plane. There we go. And so right now we created a camera actor, a plane actor, a texture 2D, and a material, and everything is assigned and ready to be used. And the camera is piloted. So now we can move along the scene, we can wander, find the right perspective, and say, okay, now I like this space, I'm ready to enable ILIAD and to draw something on the plane, because the plane was attached to the camera. So when we moved the camera, the plane came along. So I drew a character. Sorry for my skills. I create a new layer and I will be painting white the character so I can be more detached from the background. Now I'm moving my cursor and I'm creating a new key pose, a drawing. And I even enable the light table so we can see by transparency the green image to see the previous drawing. So I can then paint another character, the outline and stuff. And I will be playing a little bit with the light table, the onion skin, to see the green, so the previous drawing, and blue for the next drawing. Let's turn it off. I mean the light table. And I'm about to create a new plane right now. Why am I creating a new plane? The new plane will be really useful, especially when you work with several characters, or if you want to paint a background and separated characters. It's much better to separate all of this, because later, if you need to add transform track or anything, it's much better to have characters separated. If you know a little bit to the animation industry, you probably heard of a multi-plane camera. Well, the philosophy is quite the same, actually. We're creating a new plane, and in this plane, I will be badly drawing some red bird. There we go. Yeah. Okay. I've done my drawings, so I can switch off ILIAD because I'm not going to draw anymore. What I'm about to do is a camera move. So to do so, I would just move my cursor a little further into the sequencer. And since I am piloting the camera, when I will be moving here the camera position, it will automatically create a key in the sequencer, symbolized here by a red dot at the top. Okay, now let's stop piloting the camera and let's see where the planes are actually placed in the environment. Actually, we can realize planes are not very well placed. They are just floating in the air. That doesn't make sense. So that's okay. We have an option for this. You just have to select the plane, and there below, just at the bottom, we have an option named the plane distance. The plane distance will move the planes far or closer to the camera, and depending on the configuration chose, for instance, here we are in a scale 100% camera. It means that the further it becomes, the bigger, and the closer to the camera, it becomes smaller. So it always keeps the same ratio. For me, it doesn't change anything. Even if the plane is further and bigger, it's still the same ratio for me. By changing this a little bit, I will do the same with the bird. And actually, I placed it a little too far because it's flying through the barn. So I'm about to change this. Perfect. And last feature, no, there's many other features. This one is called detach the plane. It is really useful, especially when you don't need a plane to track the camera move, because you noticed just earlier when the camera is moving, both planes came along. But maybe we don't want both planes to follow. Maybe just the character should track the camera move, and the plane with the bird should remain at the same spot. Sorry. So we will be using the option detach the camera, so it remains at the same place. Then you can even see the little outliner, the orange outliner for the plane, and I will be even moving the drawing key poses so we can see it better. There you go. Okay, yeah. So far, with this view here in the sequencer, this is what we call the board view. It is the whole view of your storyboard in a way. But there is also the shot view, and the shot view will be very useful, especially when you need to work more precisely with your storyboard. Especially here in this case, I'm about to move the truck. I would like the truck to move along on the road. So I can do this right there into the board view. I have to enter the shot sequence to go in the shot view. So I will be double-clicking on the shot sequence. There we go. And here we have an interface much more similar to the level sequence. We just open the outliner, we select the truck, and I will be then drag and dropping the truck into the shot sequence. And then after that, it's very simple. I can just add a transform key, a transform track. I can add keys, move the truck, and everything. This is very simple. And here it is just a static mesh, but it will also work with a rigged character with all the I key and F key ready to be used. It works as well. So here we have an example where the truck, the character is jaywalking, but it's not hit by the truck. We can also add some tracks, obviously. And we can also use notes, which is a specific asset from EPOS. Notes are really useful to write information for your teammates or to write dialogues, for instance. And you can even enable them directly in the viewport. And later, when you will render the movie, you will have the possibility to burn in these notes with the sequence. And here I'm using, again, a note asset just to show we can also add notes directly in the board, and depending on the duration, it will pop in or out in the view. Here, I just created a new shot because at the moment we just had a storyboard with a simple shot, so we're about to create a new one. And with this second shot, I'm about to show you another feature named takes. Just like you probably know it into the level sequence, takes will help me to have different variations for the same shot, for the same scene. So here I will have two options. I will have one with a very, quite a close-up. So here I'm creating the new take, just right there. So we'll have a version with quite a close-up on a single character, and we have the take two, where we'll be much from afar with a second character drawn on the same plane. That's not good. I should have created a new plane, but whatever. Anyway, we're switching between both takes. One, yep. Yeah, second take. And here we're into the content browser, just for me to show you all the different assets that were created. So here we have the private folder that is created with the storyboard, the board sequence. And here we have all the material, the note assets, the shot sequences, and the texture 2D created. And into the master folder, we have a master texture and a master material that will be used for when we create all the planes. So what are the possible workflows with EPOS? We have actually 3-4 workflows. There is the all-in-one, so this is the one I just showed you, where we place cameras in the environment, then we create, we draw directly. So that's a possible workflow. But it can be quite overwhelming for storyboard artists. Usually, they just don't want to, do a rough storyboard. They don't want to care about camera position and stuff. That is not their work. So they would rather prefer something more simple, like this second workflow, rough storyboard in an empty level. This workflow means they will work in Unreal Engine, but we will turn Unreal Engine into a drawing software. Let me explain. So we created, so it's Unreal Engine 4, but it's still the same behavior. So we have all sequence ready to work, and we just unleash the scene, so just white background, just like any other drawing software. And then we're ready to work with ILIAD and EPOS enabled. And we have even 2 planes, one plane with the background, the 2D background, and a plane for the characters. I'll let you enjoy the video. And so for each plane, we'll be adding several layers, for instance, to have the outline plus the filled color to detach the character from the background. There we go. We just have we have 3 shots, so it means we have 3 cameras, several planes. They are all exactly at the same place. There is no background at the moment. Okay, so the storyboard artist just did his work. Now, maybe it's mine as a layout artist. So I open the scene. Okay, there's no level, so I'm about to use the option levels from Unreal Engine, and I'm about to use an existing map. It is a low poly map, but it's still a map. And so now I can just wander into the scene and say, okay, I have to pick up the right spot for the first shot. Here we go, that is great. Great, we go into the shot sequence and we snap the position of the camera to the position we have into the viewport. So automatically we moved the planes and the camera to the right position. And then we just have to play again with plane distance and with the focal length of the camera to place all these elements properly. And I can even then later add a transform track. I will go maybe a little further. You can see the next step. Oh, there we go. Okay, so this is for the first shot. So let's do the same now for the other shots. So here, again, move, snap. I forgot to move the second character that is very in the background, but whatever. And here we have the same behavior, same work to do with the third shot. And here we can understand why it is really important to split backgrounds, 2D backgrounds with the 2D characters, because it allowed me to mute the plane with the background, so I can just focus on the characters. So then we have the third workflow, where we'll be using outsourced images. This workflow is for instance, if you work with storyboard artists who really don't want to work on Unreal Engine, they don't want to know anything about EPOS or ILIAD, they are very fine working with any other third-party software, and that's totally fine. If they're efficient with this way, let them work that way. But the only condition then will be for them when they render the sequence to respect a pattern, a naming pattern when they will export, when they will render the image sequence. And then we will just open the image sequence, because EPOS will have the ability to analyze the naming pattern and automatically turn all of this into shot sequences, plane cameras, and drawings. Here we go. So here we have, again, a low poly environment. We have an image sequence. We open the function. We will find the right folder into the operating system. We analyze the pattern like this. It finds the image sequence, and there you go. We have all the textures, the shots, and the materials rendered into the content browser. And then again, let's have fun placing cameras and planes at the right spot. Can also enable the camera options if we need to play a little with the aperture. And then comes the fourth workflow, which doesn't exist actually. We are we're actually looking for partners who would be really willing to use EPOS and ILIAD in a virtual cam, virtual production, including motion capture and all these things. Well, that would be really very fun to make a test. So if any of you are interested to contact me, please do. So what's about rendering the storyboard? So we have two options to do so. We have the storyboard render queue. It's actually the movie render queue, but with a few options already configured for the storyboard. You can export using EVID or April ProRes, and you can even use FFmpeg libraries if the library is installed on your computer, obviously. And we also have the storyboard export. Just means you will export image sequences. You can define the different patterns. If you want to export all the drawings, just, I don't know, the first image from each shot is really up to you. We'll configure all of this. You're free to configure this. Another video. Here it comes. I thank my colleague Antoine Antin, who did all these great, amazing videos. Very last thing that is really important for me is when we were working with making EPOS and ILIAD, we really realized the power of Unreal Engine in this process. Because, okay, making 2D, 3D animation, 2D, 3D storyboards is already something you can do with other software. So the very thing that Unreal Engine brings to this is all the collaborative and iterative process, especially thanks to the source control and the multi-user sessions. Let me explain. So here we have two screen records. There is me on my Mac and my colleague Fabrice on its Windows. We live 20 miles away from each other because we all work remotely at Praxinos. We are enabling a multi-user session. So basically, we will be working on the same scene. And we also enabled the source control via GitHub. And actually, we will be working together on the same scene. So while I will be placing planes and cameras within the environment, he will be adding a few elements into this environment. So here we can see in real time what's happening. Any change Fabrice is bringing to the left, I can see it in real time on the right. And this is the very moment we realized, oh my God, there is so much potential for telling stories when you're meeting with your team, even if they are we're very far from each other because we have, for instance, a pandemic or something. That is really useful to have these kind of things, and especially to do this at the very earlier stage of productions, especially, I mean, for storyboard artists, I think it's really inclusive for them because in this industry, most of the time, storyboard artists just do their jobs, and when the production starts, they've never been asked their opinion about how the production should evolve. And I think that with that kind of tools, we have the possibility to have their opinion about what was their choice in the storyboard, in the animatic. Why should we do this way or maybe this way? Maybe together we can say, okay, maybe this, if the camera was over there, would be much better. We can see the intensity of the emotion for the character and all these things. That is, yeah, really, really exciting to have this kind of tools. To conclude this talk, Well, all the things we've been doing so far at Praxinos, so ILIAD, EPOS, and many other things, will feed another bigger project named Odyssey. Odyssey is actually the very reason we created Praxinos. It's a 2D animation software in a 3D real-time environment, so obviously with Unreal Engine under the hood. And well, that's why we've been making all these plugins. That's because they will be part of Odyssey as a standalone software. Tiny test. Very small, but very nicely. All the special effects, obviously, thanks to Epic Games, because without their support, financial, technical, and just the friendly support, because they're really amazing, we wouldn't be there, obviously. We also have a bunch of French partners I would like to thank. I would like us to do thanks to specific beta testers, because EPOS was we had a closed beta for EPOS, and among the different people we had 2 great companies who really put a lot of effort testing not even stable plugin at this moment. So it's the Japanese company Graphinica for the short film Pista, and Passion Pictures, the English studio Passion Pictures, for The Day I Became a Bird. These short films are still being made, so keep an eye on them. I'm sure it's absolutely wonderful. Well, and that's the end. So if you need to follow us, we have a bunch of social media. You have my email address at the bottom left corner, and you have a QR code you can flash to have more information about Odyssey and why we're making this. Thank you very much.